Okay. All right. So here we go. So my presentation today is called Making Safe Spaces for English Conversation, a collection of successful and less than successful stories. And so here we go. So just to give a quick overview of where I'm going today. First, talk about my background, which Ruthie sort of alluded to just before, which includes my academic background, I guess, my graduate studies, which was not actually in English and English teaching, but in history. In the time since I've presented at JALT, which is where Ruthie and I first met, I did some research with my university students that I thought was I could connect to the themes of today's talk. So I'll be doing that second. And finally, talking about different experiences I've had teaching youth, in particular, junior high school, but also I guess a bit older elementary, so grade 6 in an ACIVA setting. So first, just a bit about me. So I'm from Montreal, Canada. Academic background is in history, and specifically oral history. Oral history is basically just qualitative interviewing. I did a master's degree and I started a PhD, which I stopped doing. I quit after a few years for a variety of reasons. In Montreal, I did start teaching English, mostly to international students who were visiting the city for a month or a summer at a time. And of course, after moving to Japan just about 4 years ago, I've been teaching English here for the first 3 years, I guess. I was teaching in one ACIVA, and then last year I started teaching part-time at Kyushu Sankyo University, part-time, and then I was fortunate enough to be able to get a full-time position just this past April. So just a bit about, again, my background. So the research I was doing in my graduate work was about Cambodian refugees and their children who were living in Montreal at the time. And so the reason I bring this up is, and the reason and how this is actually connected to the main part of the talk, is this methodology of oral history. And a big part of oral history and qualitative interviewing as well, more generally, is to be conscious and aware of the co-construction of stories and narratives. It's not so much an interviewer asking an interviewee a list of questions. It's not so much just a question, answer, but really a conversation. An interviewee or a participant's answers are in part shaped by your very presence there as a researcher, as a conversation partner. And so thinking about that helps me to think about creating conversations and dialogues in an English language setting as well. The person who you're talking to in your speaking exercise helps to shape what you are or are not going to say. And so I think this sort of way of thinking about my English classes certainly comes out of my experience researching history. And if I'm going to highlight just one sort of scholarly figure from that field of oral history, this is Alessandro Portello, who studies Italian history, particularly labor history, and does a lot of oral history interviewing. And he says here, the interview is a historical and social event. In the interview, we are the co-authors, the co-creators of a document that, to some extent, is about us, as well as about the persons we interview. So really, conversations, whether in an interview setting or in your English classes, or really, I guess anyone you really talk to, is dependent on the people who are shaping that interview. And everyone plays, not necessarily always an equal part, but plays a part, and I think a significant part in conversation. I guess like let's say EFL parallel would be Gary Barkusin over here, who has done a lot of research on narrative knowledging. And so I find his work to be, has similar connections and veins as the work that I was doing previously as a graduate student. And here he says about narrative knowledging, is about the meaning-making, learning, or knowledge construction that takes place during the narrative research activities of co-constructing narratives, analyzing narratives, reporting the findings, and reading, watching, listening to research reports. So in Gary's case and Alessandro Portelli's case, they're talking more about research processes, interviewing for the purpose of research and of creating, say, a research article or a conference presentation. But I think actually their insights lend themselves to conversation more generally, but could also really, I think, tie into our classrooms, whether we're teaching in Eikaiwa or we're teaching in really sort of any educational institution where English education is key. And so with this, I guess, theoretical background in mind, I want to transition to talking a bit about some of the research I'm sort of started doing in the last couple of months at the university I'm teaching at. And so a couple or a few questions that I had in mind was about students and their language learning careers. And so what that means is, the accumulated experiences that students have had when it comes to learning English. So that could include grade school, that could include Eikaiwa, that could include Juku, that could include having an overseas friend. All of this contributes in some ways, negative positively or negative or positively, to their understanding of what English and English education means to them. So my research questions for this current project I'm sort of trying to explore is, how do students rate different stages of their English language career? What are the forms and the contents of the memories participants attribute to those experiences? So how do they say, how do they tell me their experiences of learning English, and what do they say? And then finally, who or what are the primary actors in their language learning experiences? So do students see themselves as agents within their own narratives and understanding of their English experiences? Do they see teachers and educators primarily as the drivers of their language learning experience? Do they see their friends as an important factor in how they make sense of their English language education? All these sorts of questions and how students give meaning to their own experiences are things that I'm interested in. And so a bit of context here. So this took place, there's questionnaires that I distributed to the students who are in my courses. And so I got 119 responses from students who range from our lowest proficiency level to our most advanced. Questionnaires could be, the length of questionnaire varied depending on whether the student did things like Juku or Eikaiwa, but the maximum number of questions it could have completed would be 36. And there was sort of the questionnaires, I guess, two different halves. One part was quantitative. It was a Likert scale from 1 to 7, which I'll go into just in a second, and short answer questions about their experiences, which is qualitative. So let's look at a little bit of the data. So of course, I'm not going to go over all questions. I'm just going to highlight a few of them, but this was in response to participants having to rate their elementary school learning experience when it came to English. So 1 was kirai, so I hated it, whereas 7 is they loved it. And so what we can see here is that most participants, well, a large number of participants were smack in the middle at 4, which is sort of like neither here nor there. But just looking at this very broadly, the majority of students leaned somewhere in the middle towards the I loved it side, to the right side of our responses here. Continue on to junior high school, we could sort of see that the distribution of responses is gravitating a little more to the left. So certainly the number 4 is the top, is our mode. And we still have people, participants, of course, who said that they liked it or they loved it. But we also start seeing more students who are moving towards the I hate it or I didn't like it side of the spectrum. And then lastly, we have high school, where we continue to see the shift to the left, away from stronger feelings of enjoyment towards the middle, especially, which is sort of like, maybe I didn't like it, or I liked it a little and I didn't like it a little, or just mama, like right in the middle. But of course, we have a larger number, the largest number out of these three stages, who said they hated it. And just to give a quick overview, you could definitely see, starting with Shogaku or elementary school in the top left, and junior high school in the bottom left, and high school on the right, you could see this gradual shift to the left, which I think maybe for some of us, it's not particularly surprising, as expectations go up, entrance exam for the next stage of their education or career, sort of play more of a part in their daily study life, as things like bukkatsu or club activities come into the fold. There's a lot of factors that could shape this shifting in responses. But what I was interested in is qualitatively, how do they help to explain their like or dislike, or even what are their memories? What do they remember about these periods in their study time? And so I'm going to highlight just a couple here. One, this first one, here we go. There were some respondents who expressed sort of lacking basics, let's say, or lacking, we could say, support. And so I'll let you just take a quick read of this. The next page will have more as well. But what I was interested in this slide and the next slide and the responses we see is, it seems that students express wanting more and wanting more support, but wanting more socializing, wanted more connection, if I'm going to try to push that a bit more. And so this next one here, a lot of you don't have to read all the quotes, but I think just generally, if I'm going to sum it up, is desire for group work, desire for communication. And so what I sort of get from that is they wanted to be social. And so if we want to be more pessimistic, we could say, oh, well, yeah, they just want to talk to their friends and not necessarily about English. But on the more generous side, we can also say, well, they, as some of these people say, actually, they wanted more socializing, and to some degree get more support, feel part of their community in a way, but just in this English class. And even like this person in the bottom right, feeling that absence of community, or the absence of like a friend circle. There were not many good friends in the class, and there were a lot of activities in pairs and groups, so it was painful. So when I read this, I feel like they're craving that support network or social network, and in the absence of it, it's hard, it's difficult. And so out of this slide, previous slide, what I get is that of course, not all students, but some students, we could say some participants, really craved some sense of community or some sense of support, whether that's from teachers or from peers. I wanted more interaction within the classroom. And so learning socially, of course, has been a big topic, not just in English education, but in other educational fields as well, that of course suggests that language learners or learners can benefit from interaction, social interaction in a classroom setting, and that students can learn more effectively through partner work or group work. And yeah, certainly I could see that in a lot of my classes, maybe not necessarily all my classes, but certainly more so than not, that students feel more comfortable asking their peers for help on a given task or assignment relative to asking me, let's say the teacher. And I can understand that. asking your friend as opposed to asking like a person in a position of authority could feel for some people more viable as an option, more doable as an option. And so, of course, I feel I should also point out that other scholars sort of complicate the idea in that social cultural norms, of course, has an effect on social interaction in the classroom. So, of course, in different types of settings, the expectation is that the teacher would provide the majority of the instruction and the answers, not fellow students, because students are students. They're not the person at the front of the class, for example. Of course, there's gender norms also that might make it difficult for mixed gender groups to work together as well. So of course, there's a variety of social, cultural, and I'm not going to count political as well. Let's say realities that might affect how students learn within a given social environment. But I would still say that based on the respondents that I pointed out, and a great deal of scholarship is that socializing peer groups, community, senses of community, I think are and can be really important in the learning environment. And of course, this is a study just from a couple of years ago now. Says, as students and teachers have strong rapport in the classroom, students' anxiety in English classes will be lowered. Teachers should lower students' anxieties in English class by establishing a strong bond with students. By accumulating successful experiences in the classroom, student anxiety related to speaking English might decrease, though it might take time. So I think this is just echoing a lot of what I've been saying, but I would like to draw attention to the last couple lines, the might part. So it's not necessarily that if students have a more positive experience in the English class that their anxiety will go down. It might decrease, though it might take time. It's not an overnight, or things aren't going to turn around necessarily in the span of a class. But as I experienced in my eIKaiwa time, it could take a really long time for students to begin to feel comfortable. So, and this is sort of one of the other respondents who said, I wish I had not been so afraid to speak English. So I think that this anxiety and fear can weigh a lot on students' experience in the classroom, and that may or may not have to do with, let's say, the educator, and it may or may not have to do with the students in the class. There's a wide variety of reasons inside and outside the classroom that could factor in. But I think the bottom line is that our students come into our classrooms with, I guess, with the accumulated experience of both their day, whatever's happening in their day. They didn't have breakfast. They went to bed late. But as well as their own life experiences, whether it's learning English or family life and other things too. So the transition over to try connect this to my eIKaiwa experience, and I guess more to the heart of well, how do we make spaces more comfortable or safe for students to be able to communicate? And so I worked in eIKaiwa for about 3 years in Fukuoka, and particularly in the last 2 years, I taught a lot of junior high school students. At this particular school, we had about, the school's not very big. It was only myself and another full-time teacher. But just for myself, I had about 25 junior high school students. Class sizes were maximum 6 students, but I think on average I had about 4, I'd say, in each of these classes. Their level ranged from about ACAN 3 to about ACAN 2. And spontaneous talking was the name of the, let's say, junior high school curriculum, which, as you might gather from the name of the curriculum, it's based on speaking. And I guess speaking spontaneously really means speaking sort of more fluently or off the cuff, let's say, not so much following dialogues or clutching onto the writing journals, but really having a more or less natural, if you want to say natural, type of conversation. And so, yeah, I guess over the last 2 years, I tried to experiment with different ways to get students to speak more, to put it sort of bluntly. And so I did a mixture of one-on-one and small group discussions within a 50-minute class. So one-on-one, meaning peer-to-peer, because, you know, some students, maybe many students, don't necessarily feel comfortable doing a one-on-one dialogue with their teacher for, again, a variety of reasons, whether we're talking about power or gender, or other factors as well. But peer-to-peer, in my experience, I felt that many students tend to be more productive, tend to be more chatty or talkative. But also trying to switch from that to doing small groups, I thought was also a good idea too, to try to vary up, I guess, the size of the discussion. Trying to rotate partners too, to get them used to speaking to not just their friend, although, you know, I try to allow that as well. The importance of questions. So I think this comes back to my own interviewing experience as well, is thinking about, you know, a really good question or well-placed question can, you know, lead to different possibilities, different kinds of answers that take the conversation to places that you wouldn't necessarily expect. And then last one is moving around the classroom. So this, I mean, actually physically moving around the classroom, getting out of our chairs a little bit. And I don't mean just, you know, having students stand all the time in their conversations. I did have them do that sometimes, but even just moving from one chair to another around the classroom, I thought was, you know, useful in changing the energy a little bit. And I think, again, this, I can only really speak to my experience. I can't speak for others' experiences, but my experience, they tended to like to move around. They didn't necessarily want to be glued to their chairs and their tables. So yeah, I had that positive experience with that. And that's one actually that I carry over to my own university classrooms. So in terms of conversations, again, this is a very, like, I think, basic cycle that I'm sure many people do. It's not necessarily groundbreaking or new, but for homework, I would assign, okay, make a simple story about your weekend. Could be, you know, on Saturday, I went to Eon Mall. I bought a notebook. It was fun. You know, that's it. These are 3 sentences. Is it, particularly when starting the spontaneous talking curriculum. So do that for homework, and then in the actual classroom, we get to share these stories. So the stories are shared usually, well, depending on the group, sometimes as a group, so with students and myself, the teacher. Then we'd try to ask questions to the student who shared their story. In the beginning, usually I would just ask the question and ask if anyone wanted to volunteer a question. I didn't necessarily make them ask a question at the outset because they didn't necessarily know how to ask a question or what questions to ask, which is how the 4th part, this part over here, comes in, is that I would review new words, but also different question forms. So usually any questions that I would ask or other students would ask, I'd write on the board. So then by the time one student finishes their story, we would hopefully have, you know, 3 or 4 different types of questions. You know, what did you buy at Eon Mall? What did you eat? Who did you go with? How did you go? How long did you stay? You know, if they had ice cream, for example, what kind of ice cream flavor do you like? Making sort of like a list of potential questions, I think gave students a lot of, well, gave them sort of, I guess, a resource or resources that they could draw on to then ask their peers in the future. And students would usually write these down at the end of our conversation. And then the cycle would continue. So it was very repetitive. Every week we'd basically do this, but slowly over time, I would be asking fewer questions and students would be asking more questions, often referring to their notebook, which is fine, but getting into the habit of at least exchanging ideas and feelings with each other. later on, when students get a bit more proficient with their questions, then I would strive towards pairing them up instead. So here I'm the circle, or the, I guess, oval in this case, and the students here are the triangles. And so again, instead of it being a group conversation, it'd be a one-to-one or one-on-one conversation. And in this case, usually I put a timer. I usually think I put a minute, and then as students were able to converse a bit more freely, I'd extend to the most would be, I think, 2 minutes. But that was more, I guess, ideal. And so, great. And so then we rotate partners. At the end, once, let's say, if I'm going to label one partner A, and then there's a partner B, once all the partner A's has spoken to all the partner B's, then I sequester all the A's together and all the B's together to then have a smaller group conversation. And usually I make that one, maybe 3 minutes long. And so by that point, they would have shared their story at least 3 times. 3 times before they got to their small group setting. So they would have been a bit more comfortable. And sometimes they also use some of the answers from the questions they received in their smaller group conversations. So it's very repetitive, but I think it helps them. And I could see, at least again, in my own experience, I could see that their conversations got longer. I could see that they were more open to expressing different types of feelings, which is something I was interested in. So these are all paraphrases. These are not direct quotes. But I will say that I was pleased to see them feel comfortable sharing certain kinds of feelings with their peers. For example, whether we're talking about confidence, whether with confidence or lack of confidence. I have a test tomorrow, but I don't feel good about it. Or fear. I went to an old temple for Halloween and my friends surprised me. I was scared. Humor, a sense of humor. Are you okay, Yusuke? So this one was, there's Yusuke in this example, was a very chatty, talkative member of this group, of this class. And he was sort of rambling and ranting, a bit off topic for quite some time. And then one of the quieter students spoke up in a joking way. Like, are you okay, Yusuke? Like, you're talking a lot. Is everything all right? And then everyone sort of laughed at that. And so being able to have, being comfortable enough to crack a joke, I think also says something about the level of comfort that these students had within their groups. I should also mention that these classes that I'm talking about, some of them would have been together since elementary school. They weren't doing this from the first week of meeting each other, but they would have had at least a year or 2 every week with each other. Some of them went to the same schools, some of them didn't. But again, it's all part of a process, a long process, but a process nonetheless. I got 97 on my math test. I'll try my best to get perfect next time, since disappointment. Our performance of Snow White was fantastic and I was so happy. Pride is a bit of a tricky one because I feel, at least in some of the university textbooks, and I guess like adult oriented textbooks too, when it comes to emotions and feelings, sometimes I've come across pride as one, and trying to explain what pride is. And students usually have to give an example of when they felt proud. And that's something that a lot of students in my classrooms have struggled with, for, we could say, cultural reasons. But when it shows up in a conversation like this between peers or in small groups or even with me, to me, it tells me that they feel a certain amount of comfort or they're a certain amount of comfort within the conversation that they're having. And to sort of wrap this up a little bit, is that in one part, students, when they come to our classes, as I said before, they come with a lot of experiences. Those experiences might have to do with their language learning experiences, but they also come with the baggage of, I don't mean baggage in a negative way, they come with the experiences of their accumulated education, their family lives, their friend lives, their club activities, different states, whether it's sleep or hunger. And that, I think, those experiences help to shape how they feel in the classroom. And I think that based on my questionnaire, but also I think based on what worked in the Eikaiwa setting, that is trying to give a lot of scaffolding, I think students want support, maybe a lot of support, maybe more support, I don't know, from teachers, but also peers. I've seen students reluctant to ask me for help, but quickly turn to their neighbor or their partner or their best friend and ask them for help. And so peers becoming sort of like co-teachers, let's say, I think can be like a powerful element in the classroom. And I think in trying to think of different ways and structures and combinations to get students maybe moving around a little bit, feeling that they can talk about, let's say, whether it's their weekend or their feelings or whatever's going on in their lives, in a safe space can really help to create a productive, but also fun, I think, English language learning environment. In terms of less successful stories, because of course I mentioned that in my subheading, but it wasn't in the main part of my presentation. It takes a long time, and the things that I've described that worked for me in my Eikaiwa setting didn't necessarily work all the time. So I could think of some groups of students who I taught for 2 years straight. It was the same group of students, and I did the same types of activities with them as I did with other groups, but for whatever reason, a variety of reasons, it took longer for them to feel more comfortable with each other, and maybe with me too. And I guess I would have liked if they felt more comfortable being expressive, but I also understand, like, it's up to each student's own comfort level, really. And so I guess the best I could do, or we could do, is just do our best to make things safe and comfortable for these students. Yeah. And so thanks a lot for listening in. My name is Pharo, and if you'd like to chat more about really anything, you can contact me at it's my work email here, sok@mail.kusan-u.ac.jp. So thank you very much. Yeah, and I'd love to hear about your experiences, of course, in your own classrooms, things that worked, things that didn't work, in terms of trying to get students to be more communicative or expressing. Yeah, I'm really excited to listen to you all too. All right, thank you very much.
Yay!
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. We have a little bit of time. I wonder if we could take 5 or 10 minutes now to take any questions.
Yeah.
I'm personally interested in what didn't work.
Right.
Right. Something you were confident or excited about trying. You tried it and it didn't go as you had hoped.
Right. Yeah.
And how you dealt with that.
Yeah. So I'd say the most common thing that I say didn't work would be, I try my best to provide a lot of scaffolding in terms of questions, and really sort of trying to give the basis for having a very short conversation. And for, I'd say, most students, they're able to apply some of those questions what kind of ice cream flavor do you like? Who did you go shopping with? In their conversations, but there's other students who really, they wrote them down, but they really, I felt, struggle to apply that. And I could see, let's say, most students within a given classroom, their ability to converse was going up, whereas one student, let's say, was really not really budging very much. And so in those sorts of situations where the student feels sort of, I don't know if it's lack of comfort or it's, I can't really put a finger on what it is, but I try to give more attention to that student. So, if we had to pair up and we were an odd number of students, usually I tried to go with that student at some point to see if I can make some sort of difference there. And would they speak to me more would they speak more if I was there, or was that a barrier to communication? Because it could go either way. And so the less than successful, let's say, stories were ones where, like, I try different sort of tactics, I guess, but student comfort, what I read as student comfort wasn't really budging. I mean, maybe they felt comfortable on the inside, and that was what they produced in class, was them at the height of their comfort. Maybe I'll never know that in a way. And if that was them actually feeling very comfortable and enjoying the class, then that's great. But I guess at the same time, that's something I'll never know. So I guess that's actually another challenge now that I think about it, is you can never really know how comfortable or uncomfortable a student is in the class, just by your own observations. But yeah, I guess things that didn't work is, this process that I worked at for like a year and a half, 2 years with some of these groups. The ones that just didn't really, I feel, expand very much, or they didn't really get more. I don't think they got more comfortable in that setting. There's a very few number of students I could think of off the top of my head that were that type of situation. As far as, I guess in the university context, it's sort of similar, although the groups are larger, so it's hard to give that one-on-one teacher-student attention. I do try when it comes to these larger group activities and pair activities. I do try to go for them a bit and try to feel out their feelings. I guess, if I had to chalk up what the less successful parts are, it's the ones where I feel, in a relative sense, from when I met them to, let's say, 6 months later, a year later, there's not very much movement. I guess I chalk that up to less than successful, I guess. I'm not sure if that really answers. I'm not sure if you're looking for a more specific example, but I off the top of my head, that's sort of, that would be my less successful group of experiences, I think.
I like how you defined it as movement is what you're looking for.
Right.
I hadn't thought of it in that way, but you also talked about dynamic space.
Right. Yeah.
Also implies movement.
Yeah.
Some change in.
Yeah. And actually, speaking to that, and I think I maybe mentioned this at JALT when we first met, is in the Eikaiwa setting, we had a manager who was here in Japan half the year and in America, in the US, for half the year. And so, one thing I do for trying to change students, like states, let's say, or trying to be more dynamic, is having students sit in teachers' chairs as they talked with their partners. So that would include, I have a student sit in the manager's chair, because it's an open concept office, just to see if that feeling of being in a literal seat of authority would give them a certain sense of confidence, or like, oh yeah, I'm top of the school. And so usually what happened is students laughed and they joked with each other, like, oh, you're the boss now. And I thought that opened them up a little bit. So I more recently, yeah, I've been thinking about dynamic space or moving physically as a way to, I don't know, liven things up and change up people's and my own sort of state too. It's not, you know, I don't really want to be sitting down either for that long. So yeah, that's been working.
Thanks. Any other comments and questions?
Hi, thank you for the, sorry, I'm going to turn my camera on.
Oh,
Hi,
hello.
thank you for the talk.
Thanks.
My actually at my school, I do action research. I don't have a traditional thesis. So my action research is communicative competence and production. And I also see like moving around, like I just took over a first grade class this year. And I usually have free talk where they can ask a question. It's a question I want them to practice, or this week was, okay, freely, you know, lots of questions, freely tell them to ask questions to your friends. And I feel like, you know, when I watch free talk, spaces really matter because, you know, they get excited, but also like it's a, like you said, dynamics, like it feels more free. Like, I don't know. They're not confined to like a space. They know they can talk in the back or they can talk in the front. So, sorry, first grade elementary, but yeah. And I might ask you later, like I might email you for your sources because I'm interested in like how to create, you know, narratives is very important because, you know, I'm doing surveys right now and I'm seeing what do you like what's necessary for you for your English career too. So it's really interesting to hear from you what you speak about, like dynamics and making their English career worthy. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And yeah, like you mentioned that the dynamics, thinking about like physical space. Yeah, I agree. And you made me think of something too, is students can also, in my experience anyways, they can control volume, like literally speaking volume. So like I'm thinking of like a large or like university class where students are sort of moving around and milling about and having to find a partner for conversation. You know, some students at that opportunity speak very loudly. They, you know, they're like yelling with their friends, going back and forth, whereas other ones are more quiet. They're still talking. I could see they're talking, but they're off in a corner somewhere. And so in a way that also I think can speak to comfort too. They speak at the level and the volume that they feel is good for them. And I think in, you know, if I'm thinking of like my Kiowa classroom, it was a very small classroom. It was, you know, you could fit 6 people in a classroom. Everyone could hear everyone, even if you're talking in pairs. So I think, you know, the benefit of having the larger space could be you could have more private, you know, if you want to think about it that way, private conversations, but you can also have like boisterous and loud and sort of, yeah, boisterous conversations too. So I think dynamics can also be volume. And I think, yeah, that could contribute to a student feeling more comfortable within a given space too, I guess. Yeah. Well, thanks for your comment. And yeah, definitely reach out to me.
And I really like how, you know, your struggle, it was like, what is it? You know, scaffolding and, you know, seeing the, like my classroom is different levels. I used to last year teach at a international preschool. So I only had like 7 kids. Now I have 26 kids. And, you know, scaffolding is a challenge because, you know, you have most of the kids know it, but most of the kids don't know it. And then you try, you know, in a small class, you like 7 kids, you can individualize their education in English, but I'm like 26 kids, that's kind of hard, but I'm trying. You know,
it's definitely a challenge. Yeah,
it's like jumping through fire hoops, but I'm trying because I think it's very important to hear every kid, you know.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and yeah, definitely reach out to me, email me about whatever. I'm happy to talk to you.
So this isn't a question so much, but it kept running through my head when I was hearing you talk. And in the remote learning playbook, is that what it's called? It's Hattie, Fisher, and Frey. Came out in 2020. And one of the quotes that really stuck with me was, forming relationships with students is the foundation for engagement, regardless of the type of learning. Like whether it's face-to-face or whether it's online or whether it's hybrid, unless you form a relationship with the students, nothing else happens.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think also, and I think something that's interesting about that is like the quality of that relationship. I don't mean quality like bad relationship or good relationship, but like I don't say like how close of a relationship that the student, let's say, wants to make with teacher is also that's also important too, because you know I think having like a relationship within the classroom is really good and really important, like you say. But you know, some students also feel like, well, you know, I don't want to you know, chat about my part-time job or my weekend all the time with this,
but that is
education.
That's the definition of relationship too. There's the negotiation of
Right.
what feels comfortable for both sides.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Right.
And I think their main point was that effective teaching is effective teaching.
Right.
And the place of the teaching is not nearly as important as the teacher building those relationships so that you can create engagement, you can create learning, you can have effective assessment.
Right.
But none of it is possible unless you have some sort of relationship.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, yeah, you've got the students who would dominate your time talking, and other students who don't want you to know anything about their life. And that may not be exactly the same as having a relationship anyway. That might be a different issue. I mean, the relationship might be more of a mutual respect and
that's it. Yeah.
Trusting your place and their place in the classroom.
Or at least like, having an understanding that you can both learn from each other in some ways. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, mutual respect and
yeah, great. Yeah, I think that. What's the name of that book? Sorry that you.
Oh, it's let me double check and make sure.
Oh, no worries.
But the authors are Hattie, Fisher, and Frey, and it came out in 2020. And I think it is the remote learning playbook, but I really suck at remembering that stuff. So
no worries. I mean, the authors are fine.
Oh, it's the distance learning playbook.
Cool.
Grades K through 12.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a really good book, but that was, it came out obviously pandemic, but
right, of course.
But it also was it had an awful lot in it about, it comes out of the Visible Learning Network.
Okay.
So John Hattie's work. It's just another one of the Visible Learning books.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. Get some water, get some coffee, and thank you again so much. I'm sure there's going to be more questions at the end as well.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening.
Yeah. So we'll see you back in 5 minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Is everybody back?
I think. Okay.
Bob is back. Yuko says
Yuko's back. Okay. So our next speaker is Matthew DeWilde, who has been teaching since 1994 and consistently in the Tokyo area. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And Matthew's background is also interesting because he's worked in a variety of different situations, including a Kaiwa, preschool level, public elementary school, and now the head teacher of an after-school program. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
As well as running a professional development company for teachers with your partner, which is also correct, right?
That is correct, yes.
Right. And what Matthew has to say will hopefully tie in really nicely with what Pharo also had to say.
Yes,
Oh.
I found quite a lot of correlations with Pharo's research and what I'm going to speak about this morning. And I made some notes and be referring quite a lot to Pharo's presentation. I thought it was fantastic. Pharo, thank you very much. It was great.
So whenever you're ready, Matthew, we are ready for you.
Okay, well, first of all, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this Sunday morning. It's lovely weather. There's so many reasons for teachers to not develop their teaching on their day off. It's very easy to say, no, I'm going to stay in bed. But the fact that we are gathered here this morning shows our dedication to our profession, our personal wish to make our students' experience in the classroom more meaningful, and I think we need to ourselves be congratulated. I also really want to say a very, very big thank you to DeWilde and especially, of course, the Tokyo branch for arranging this presentation, and it's my great honor to be speaking with you this morning. Thank you very much for having me. I'm going to share screen right now and go to a PowerPoint presentation. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a big black box on the right-hand side? Because sometimes that...
There is.
Okay, let me just clear that. How's that?
Okay.
Okay, we're good. All right, my name is Matthew DeWilde. Yes, I have been teaching for, I think, 29 years. I'm just going to... I arrived in 1994, but I'm going to skip to 1996. Because that's kind of where I feel my teaching career really took off. I started teaching in public elementary schools in Tokyo's Chuo Ward, Sumida and Arakawa. Now they're quite significant because at the time Sogo Teki na Gakushu Jikan, or in other words, integrated studies was put into public elementary schools, and English was one of those areas that public elementary school students were to be experiencing, and Tokyo's Chuo Ward was the very first ward in all of Japan to put English as in that form through every elementary school from 1st grade to 6th grade on a regular basis. So actually I was teaching every student in every public elementary school kid in Chuoku for 4 years. I moved to Arakawa-ku eventually, where I met my current partner, Kawahara Hiromi, and Arakawa was the very first city in all of Japan to put English as a subject, as a school subject, with homeroom teachers teaching it, and that was way back in 2001. It was the very first school to make that move, and my current partner and I, we were advisors and actual teachers for that program. I stayed in the public arena for about 11 years, then moved to a private preschool and afternoon English school in Tokyo. I stayed there for 14 years. Throughout that time, my experiences had me presenting at a number of seminars, including JALT a couple of years ago. And that's a part of my work that I still enjoy very, very much. I like working with teachers, helping teachers develop, and raising the quality as much as I can of English education in Japan. My partner and I opened this teacher development company, if you like, organization called English Uplift in 2019. In 2021, I was asked to be the director of a new preschool, English immersion preschool in Tokyo, and I became that director. I left that after 2 years and am currently the head teacher at Oshiro Kids English School in Tokyo. Hey, next. Those all.
Can I just butt in?
Yes.
I actually do see a long black box at the top of your screen.
A long black box.
Yeah, it doesn't block the text, but it blocks your name. Oh, there it goes. Just went up.
Better?
There's one more right under your name.
Under my name. Ah, that one. Okay. Boom. How's that?
Oh, okay.
Are we good? Okay.
Good.
That's the Zoom. That's the Zoom message. Oh, that's Zoom messages and a Zoom window there. But it should be clear now. How's that? There's
Much
a little.
better.
Okay. Thank you.
Matthew, can I just butt in again? There seem to be a whole 1, 2, 3 black boxes above your slides.
3 boxes above the slides.
Yeah, there's one. And there's another one above your head again. So,
Yes, that is, I can't really get rid of that.
okay. Well, they don't seem to be affecting the slides at the moment.
They
so
don't
it's
affect the slides, so.
Okay, can I move that? That's probably up the top is the best place to put it.
Oh, and it's smaller now. Yeah,
Yes.
top is
So
fine.
it's on the slides a bit. Now it's on the slide again. But
Oh, wow. Hang on.
You just disappeared.
How's that? It should be at the top right-hand slide. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay.
You can still read, so.
Okay. So here's just a brief summary of the teacher development workshops, seminars, and all of that I have been very pleasured to be invited to. Only one of them did I actually apply to speak at. That was the ETJ English Language Teaching Expo of 2019 and 20. I applied for that, but all the others I've been actually just asked to come and talk to teachers with my experiences. So it's been a great journey, and it's continuing to this day. I'd also like to just give a bit of a shout out to the English Uplift teachers who are joining us this morning. I recognize Yuri Sensei and Sachi Sensei and Hugo Sensei. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Now, if we as English teachers are seriously interested in increasing the ability of students to communicate in English and to speak out, I think we need to ask ourselves a few very, very important questions. Now, in the classroom, a lot of things happen. In the classroom, of course, our students are speaking. Now, what we need to ask ourselves, first of all, okay, sometimes our kids speak English, sometimes our kids speak Japanese. I think it's important to identify what's the ratio, how much English, how much Japanese are our students actually using in our classroom. So I do tend to, when I'm working with teachers directly, I do want to get a particular figure from them. Is it 50-50? Is it 70-30, 30-70? But I think right now it's important for us at least to start thinking about it. If you want to increase our students' English communication abilities, ask ourselves, what's the current ratio between their use of English and their use of Japanese in the classroom? Secondly, are you happy? Do you want to increase the English and lower the Japanese? And if so, why? Why do you want your students to actually use more English? Now, I think that's important to for us to think about. And if you can get your own answers to those questions right now, that'd be great. Secondly, teachers too. We also speak in the classroom. We speak English sometimes, we speak Japanese sometimes. For whatever reason. Personally, I don't use any Japanese in the classroom. But of course, I'm not going to enter a debate on what language teachers use. Teachers have a total, that's their right to use whatever language they want in the classroom. But I just want to ask you, if you're interested in increasing your students' English communication ability, what's the ratio of your English usage to Japanese in the classroom? Are you happy with it? Would you personally like to increase your English in the classroom? Many of us here are native English teachers, but still, I know lots of native teachers who also use Japanese in the classroom. And why do you want to use more English? So, all right. We're interested in increasing our students' use of English because we're English teachers. In order to do that, after we've assessed what language do we use, what language do they use, how much are they using, let's ask ourselves, when and why do our students even speak in the classroom? When and why do they speak? We know that they're mixing a couple of languages, but when and why do they speak? Well, actually, it doesn't take a lot of thinking, but there's basically only 3 reasons why our students speak. They speak because they want to, they speak because they need to, and they speak because they are told to. Students speak in our classroom because they want to, they need to, or they are told to. Now let's look at each one individually. This one, number 3, they're told to. Well, this is in the form of basically following our lesson, repeating, practicing dialogues, practicing expressions through games. That's when, if they are repeating, if they are practicing a dialogue, if they are practicing some kind of expression from the textbook, then they are being told to say that language. It's not that they want to, not that they need to, they are told to. Now, the want to. The want to is interesting. It's very difficult for us to control. You know, you can't say to students, please speak more because I want you to want to speak more. You can't control it. If they want to speak out, it's because they have a motivation. Of course, as teachers, we do have an effect on students' motivation, and that can then link to their want to speak out. But in the classroom at the time, their want to is very difficult for us as teachers to control. The need to speak out. Now, this is the key. If you want your students to speak out more in class, let's look at controlling their need. And in fact, in the classroom, it's quite easy for a teacher to control the need for our students to speak out. The want to and the need to. The want to, we can't really control. It's hopefully that our kids have a great attitude to wanting to use English and they'll speak out. But the need to, we can definitely control. Now, if you think about it very carefully, the want to and the need to speak out in English in the classroom is representative of genuine use of English. Whenever our students speak out because they want to or they need to, they are genuinely using English. The told to is practice. It's very important for teachers of English to all students to recognize the difference between practicing English and using English. Now, given the climate where we are, 2023, in this AI controlled, not controlled, but very strongly influenced social environment, what kind of skills do our students need for the future? There's this thing called the 6 C's, and one of them is communication. Communication involves genuinely using a language. In our case, because our students are our students of the English language, we need to give them opportunities for them to genuinely use English. Enough practice, we need them to start using English. And so we need to increase their want to, which is kind of hard for us to do, but we can definitely influence their need to use English. Let's move on. I'd like to invite you to watch a short video. It's about 8 minutes long, and it's a genuine lesson of mine. And I'm in the classroom with kids, and the kids are speaking some English. I'd like you to make a note on a notepad. What English are the kids actually saying? And we'll be discussing that shortly. Just a bit about the class. I guess it's important that you have some background about the class. There are about 8 elementary school students in this class, ranging from elementary 2nd grade to 5th grade. I'm saying about 8 because not all of the kids are actually in the camera's view. The English experience of these kids is also a mixed bag. There are some fairly new kids in there, but there are also some kids in there who have a few years experience with me as their teacher. Their lessons involve me meeting them meeting me for 90 minutes a week. Okay, sorry, let's just go back. That's the class, about the class. In the video, you'll see some materials that are being used. I'm using these materials in class. This is published by Apricot Publishing. You can see there are a number of fairly colorful pictures of kites. There are 3 colors, 4 shapes: triangle, rectangle, square, and circle, and 2 sizes, big and small. And so all of those pictures are on the whiteboard. And there are small copies as well of the same pictures, and the kids need to use the target English. Is your kite a circle? Is your kite blue? Is your kite red? In order to guess which is my kite. Okay, it's a process of elimination. They have to use this English. This is the target English. Is your kite a circle? In order to find the kite that the teacher is holding. All right, so let's just quit from there. Just going to head over to just a moment, please. How do you do that? I'm just looking for that link. Hear me, I can't get that. Where's that video? Just a moment, please bear with me. It's there, it should be open. I have to move this. Okay, here we go.
There we go.
Thank you so much. All right. There's the screen again. Just move that out of the way. No, I don't need that. Oh, I see. He may need to stop sharing in order to share a video. Can you see this? This is the beginning of a YouTube video. Just let me know. Can you see that?
Yes, now we can.
We can. And did you hear that as well?
Yes.
Okay, let's keep going.
Yay!
Yay.
Look carefully at this excellent picture. This picture.
Not excellent.
It is. It's excellent. I drew it. I drew this picture. Do you want to see it? My name is Picasso.
What's Picasso?
Daddy.
What's
Show me,
Picasso?
please. Show me, please.
It's good.
What's Picasso?
Show me.
I drew it.
No,
Yeah, I did.
you draw it.
Good boy. You didn't draw it. I drew
You
it.
didn't draw it.
Excellent.
This is copy. So you copy and copy the text. You copy the textbook. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I drew it.
You didn't
Good
draw it.
boy. One more time. Good. One more
You
time.
didn't draw it.
You don't.
I didn't draw it.
Good. I know you did. I drew it.
You didn't draw it.
One more time.
You didn't draw it.
I drew it.
No, you didn't draw it. Copy the picture.
Mickey.
Do you need a copy?
I don't need a copy. I drew it.
You didn't draw it. It's
Good
a
boy.
copy.
You didn't.
You didn't draw it.
Good.
You didn't draw it.
Good. Hey, okay. Well, you don't believe me, but that's okay. What do you see in this picture?
Sky.
The sky. Yes.
Cloud.
That's right. That's right.
Cloud.
Clouds.
Two birds.
Bird.
Sorry, how many?
Two birds.
All right. So what do you see?
Two birds.
Excellent.
Two triangle.
A triangle? Oh, a triangle
This is a
kite.
kite. Triangle kite.
A triangle kite. That's right. Do you like it?
No. No. Why did?
I like red. I like triangles.
I don't like triangle. And I don't like red. I like red too.
I don't like red.
I drew it.
You
You
did,
did
right?
it.
Okay, you don't like this one? Fine. Maybe you like this one. I drew this one too.
Show me.
Show me,
You didn't show me.
You didn't draw it.
I changed it. You don't like triangles? I changed it. Hey, what's this shape?
I don't like.
I don't
I
like.
don't like.
It's not a triangle. It's okay.
I don't like snow.
Red is no.
One more time.
Red is no.
Why are you laughing?
You say you didn't. You say
You drew it.
you drew it.
Yeah,
You didn't drew it.
I drew
You did
it.
joke.
I'm not joking.
You copied the textbook.
Ah,
100%. How do you say 100%?
100%?
100%.
100% what? 100% I drew it? Okay, well, I'll make a change. Let's change. How about this one?
I don't like.
You like red? Let's try this one.
I
I don't like red.
One more time.
don't like red.
Right?
Yes.
Thank you, Kazuki. You have good sense. What's wrong, Mio-iko?
I don't like house. I don't like red. Red is beautiful. I don't like brown.
One more time.
I don't like brown.
Just a moment. Mickey, please.
Yes. I like red. I don't like red. I like yellow. I don't like. I like white. I like red, but I don't like brown house. Oh, mushroom.
Yeah, I don't have blue.
Oh,
I don't have blue.
I don't like red.
I don't have blue.
You have blue.
I don't have blue.
What?
Red, 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 red. Blue!
I got out.
Hey, do you like it? I like the blue. Thank you. Me too.
Me too. I don't like circle.
Yurino,
I don't like circle.
it's blue.
I like
And
blue, but
it's blue and it's a circle.
I like blue, but I don't like circle.
Yurino?
I like blue. Me too.
Thank you.
I like blue, but I don't like circle. Me too.
Okay. Hey, hey. One more time. It's not too big. One more time. Bigger than the house. Well, that's okay. Thank you so much. Well, what's this shape? What's this shape? I don't like it. I'm not asking you that. What's the shape? Nobody knows? Unbelievable. Rena, thank you. Sit down. Tell us. What's this shape?
Blue rectangle.
Good girl. One more time. A blue rectangle. Hi.
Rectangle.
A rectangle.
Rectangle.
Nice try. A rectangle.
Rectangle.
Yeah, big boys.
Rectangle.
Good. This one? Oh, it's the same. Wow. Magic. A rectangle, a rectangle. But this one is blue and this one is red.
And And this one is big, this one is small.
This one is blue, this one is red.
This one is big, and this one is small.
This one is blue, this one is red.
This one is big, this one is small.
This one is blue, this one is red.
This one is big, this one is small.
This one is big, this one is small.
This one is blue, this one is red.
Whoa.
Let me try this.
So, what's the question? What's the question?
It's your kite,
Oh.
blah blah.
That's right.
It's your kite.
Okay, we'll go this way. Is your kite, is your kite red? Is your kite blue? Is your kite a rectangle? Are we these shapes? What's the shape? Rectangle. Square. Circle. Triangle. Okay, here we go first question. No.
Is your car a kite circle?
No.
Is your kite square?
No.
No.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Hey, okay. Thank you for watching that. So that was a 8-minute excerpt from an actual lesson. Now, our task was to just make a note of what the kids said. Hopefully that was made easier by the subtitles, and we'll be discussing exactly what the kids said very, very shortly for the purpose of increasing our own students' communication ability. Now, often I'd like to get your feedback on what you saw right now, but because of time restrictions, let me just share with you what other teachers have said with regards to that particular footage. And perhaps you can relate to it. Some teachers have been quite surprised with the amount of English that was spoken by the kids. Some teachers have noted that they didn't hear any Japanese. I agree with both of those. Yes, I think this kid spoke a lot. Yes, I didn't hear any Japanese. In my classes, with regards to those first discussion questions, basically, my students as well only use English in class. They didn't hesitate to speak out. In other words, they displayed a very positive attitude towards speaking out in English. Yes, I agree. The students spoke English with each other. Yes, they did. And the students seem to be having fun, and I can also agree with that. And occasionally I get this comment, I think the students spoke out because you're a native speaker. Now, I definitely disagree with that. I don't think me being a native speaker has anything to do with the kids' actions in the classroom. In fact, when I've helped lots of teachers increase their students' communication in the classroom, and most of the teachers I've worked with have been Japanese. So really, your ethnicity has no difference, makes no difference, because everything, as we talked about, the needs of students to speak out. In fact, it doesn't look it, but I'm controlling everything in that classroom. I'm controlling all the students' needs to speak out. And there's a good combination of need to speak out and want to speak out. And let's have a look at the English that they said. Perhaps you made the same notes. Here are the notes that I made. This is what I heard the kids say. And there's actually a bit more. I realized when I watched this particular footage that I did miss out on a few things that the kids said. But this is basically kind of what they said. Anything in brackets here, like where do I sit and where, and my name is Hiroki and all of that, that is part of the original footage. I have edited it down to a short 8-minute footage, and you didn't hear that English, but this is pretty much the English that they said in this particular lesson. They also said, is your kite a circle? And as you recall, this is the target English. Is your kite a circle? That was the lesson's target English. Now, to get to that target English, they used a lot of other English. So it kind of begs a label. If there are two types of English that is happening in the classroom, and one of them is called target English, then wonder what would you call the other English? This is target English. So for the want of a label, I've called this non-target English. It's all the English that happens in our classroom that's not actually textbook English, repeated English, studied English, the lesson target English. It's all the other English, non-target English. Now, if you can divide the English of your students in the classroom into two groups entitled target English and non-target English, and I was to ask you, which do you think is more important? Remind ourselves, we should remind ourselves that students speak out because they want to and they need to. And the third one is that they are told to. This one, they want to and need to, is genuine use of English. The told to is the practice. So if you were to ask yourself, well, which one is more important? If the end goal, the end game, the overall objective of English education is to have our students be able to use English, I would argue very strongly that non-target English is much more important than target English. Please ask yourself, as English teachers, when is the last time you asked, is your kite a circle? So the non-target English has enormous value, enormous worth in our kids' education experience, English education experience, and it has enormous value and worth towards their future as being communicators of English. Unfortunately, in my long experience of teaching English in this country, and now I'm going to make some fairly general statements here, and you may disagree in certain terms, but in very general terms, okay, particularly in public English education. Japan's English education is unaware of the importance of this kind of English, this non-target English, the English that kids actually use. They're unaware of its importance. Its sole focus of English lessons is on target English, English that is kind of difficult to use. In the end, it's not very used. And often it's taught in Japanese. Both teachers and students place more importance on test scores in this country than on communication. This is why I feel so few Japanese can use English. If there had been more awareness of non-target English, if teachers had been more concerned with giving students experience of non-target English, perhaps this country may have produced a few more Japanese who can use English. If we want our students to become adults who are able to use English, we need to provide them the experience in the classroom now. Non-target English is that experience. And I feel it's not, I feel very strongly that's what the job, the role of English teachers is, to give students opportunities to use English and then teach it. Why are we teaching English if we're not giving students opportunities to use it? Or I think most teachers in this country at times are giving students opportunities, but they're not aware of its importance, its significance. We must increase students' non-target English experiences. Now, we talked about students speak because they want to, they need to, or they're told to. The want to and need to are genuine English examples of genuine usage. But the want to is very difficult to control. But the need to, we can control that. We can control our students' need to speak out. And that the non-target English approach is an approach. It's not a method. It's an approach of teaching English that I have developed with my partner at English Uplift, and it's an approach that we've patented and we are helping teachers work with. How do you control students' need to speak out? The need to speak out. How do you increase our students' non-target English? The thinking behind the non-target English approach is we create situations for students that generate their need to say something. This has got nothing to do with target English. This has got nothing to do with what's in the textbook. It's got nothing to do with, is your kite a circle? In the classroom, from the moment they enter that room to the moment they leave those doors, there are millions of situations that we can create for them to actually need to say something. And that's the thinking behind the non-target English approach. Oh, I need to say something. I need to say something. That's what our students are thinking here. There's a second video, if you're okay, I'd love you to observe. Before I get into this video, let me just give you a bit of a background on this particular video. In April 2021, that's a little over 2 years ago, I started teaching in an English conversation school in Tokyo. When I got there, of course, in class, I only used English. To my dismay, the students only used Japanese in that English class. Similarly, there were elementary school kids Monday to Friday from 1st grade to 6th grade, but every class, regardless of their age or experience, they only used Japanese in that class. The only English that they could use was hello, yes, no, okay, thank you, and see you. Everything else was Japanese. Now, I needed to turn that around. So I put them in situations where they needed to use English, kept putting them into situations where they needed to use English, and then slowly, over time, the amount of English that they could use because they needed to increased. Now, I'm just letting you this know because in the second video, you're going to be seeing a whole list of English that the kids were using. And that's where we can discuss, well, why did they need to use that English? As part of this process in getting the kids able to use more English, start to turn their Japanese around into English. As part of that process, at the end of each lesson, for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, because the lessons themselves were 2 hours long every week. Once a week, a 2-hour lesson. At the end of each lesson, in order to encourage them to start speaking out in English, I would help them, remind them, what English did you say today? And they'd say things like, oh, I have it, or may I go to the toilet, or whatever. And they would start to tell me what English they used in that lesson, and I would write it on the whiteboard. We said this, that's right, yeah, you said that. Did you say this? Good, good, let's write that up on the whiteboard. And so I wrote up all the English that they said in that class. And in the start, it was only like 4 or 5 things. And then I'd say, all right, fantastic. You said 5 things today in English, great. Let's make that 10 next week. Can we make 10 next week? Yeah, okay. So every lesson, a little by little by little, I would start to remind them that using English is valuable. Using English is great. Let's use more next week. And none of this was target English, by the way. The target English was not very relevant. It was all the other English that they would say during that lesson. and we would try and slowly, we would count it every week and increase it. Well, little under 2 years later, about 20 months later, this is now moving up to January 2023, when the following video was observed. When the following video was filmed, and I'm going to show you. About 20 months later, first of all the Japanese in all of those classes from Monday to Friday had disappeared. All of those kids were only using English in the classroom. So that's one. The other thing, what English did you say today? The kids were speaking so much English in the classroom that we had to stop after 15 minutes of that lesson to start making a list. Because if we'd left it to the end of the 2-hour lesson, we all would have forgotten what they said. There was so much of it. So we stopped it after 15 minutes and started making a list of the English that they had already used. Then we'd stop again after 60 minutes. And then we'd stop again after 110 minutes. And the amount of English that the kids were using in all of those classes, in those classrooms from Monday to Friday, was so immense that we started taking a record. Monday class number at the end of 2 hours, the Tuesday class number at the end of 2 hours, Wednesday class. We would, on a mini whiteboard, we would take a note of the amount of English that they'd used. We'd count them and put the number, and then we'd compare it with other classes. At the beginning of the following week, we would look at what we would remind ourselves, what number did we get last week? How many English expressions did we use last week? And let's look at the other classes this week too. That kind of became a routine. So let's have a look then. This is after 20 months of a non-English environment to an all-English environment. And let's have a look. Okay, just have to move this out of the way. So the video starts with us as a class, remembering last week's number. And then the rest of the video is talking about the English that we used in this lesson. Okay, let's just move this box out of the way. Do you remember last week's number?
43.
One more time.
43.
43.
At the beginning of every lesson, we remember how many English expressions the students used in the previous lesson. And then we compare that number to other days' classes.
43.
Is that right? I forget.
I forget.
Maybe 43?
45.
45?
45.
45? Is that right?
Yeah.
Shall we check? Last week's number?
5.
45. Good.
Show me the number.
Show me the Tuesday number? This was yesterday.
Yesterday. Show me the Monday number. Show me the Monday number. Yes! Show me the Saturday number. Show me the Friday. 68.
49. Now, 15 minutes of the lesson has passed and the students are speaking a lot, so it's time to start making notes. What English did you... Only 15 minutes. Okay, never mind. What English did you say?
You didn't change your mind.
Okay. Sorry, you didn't give me one? Good. Who has? You didn't.
What
Me.
do I do?
Good, what do I do? It doesn't matter. What do I do? I will win. It doesn't matter. I will. Good, don't change the rules. Good. Anything else?
What do we need?
What do we need? What? What do I do is here? One more time, Ria. Where do we sit?
Show me. What's Friday class record? I'm good, I'm fine, I'm okay. Really? I need some tea. I'm not sleepy. Well, what? I can do it. Where do we put it?
Hey, okay. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Oh. 17.
Oh, nice start.
Nice start. Good. Because between 4:15 and 4:33, we said 17 things. That's good. That is a nice start.
Oh my God.
Hey. Hey. 5:24.
What do you mean?
Good, good, good. Hang on. What do you mean?
Nice start. Let's have it needs in my bag.
Good. You didn't say we.
You didn't say we need.
Good.
We need.
You didn't say we need. Blah, 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 blah.
What page can I go to the toilet? May I have? I don't think so. I'm getting my text.
The rocket is there.
Oh, the rocket is there. The rocket.
Here you are.
32, 33, 34. 6 o'clock.
9.
Hey, okay, what English? Wait, please.
What? Stop, please. What English
Stop,
do
please.
we color?
Good.
Stop, please.
What English do we color?
This one, 2 homework.
Everybody, please, ready to go.
You said you can choose any color.
Okay, good. One more time faster. Ready, go.
You said you can choose any color.
Okay, good.
You said you can choose any.
Good, 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 good.
You
Good.
said-
Too slow. You said you can choose any color.
You said you can choose any color.
34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39. Congratulations, 49.
May I use a
50.
It's enough.
May I erase the whiteboard? 50.
Yeah!
Hey. So, that process of putting kids into situations where they have to say something, the need to say something generated in this particular lesson, 50 expressions. Now, it's not just that this particular class is special or it contains a unusually large number of kids with a good attitude to speak out, because as you saw, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday class all had similar numbers after about 20 months, not even 2 years. So let's look at some of the English that they had said and discuss the need behind it. So one of the expressions that the kids remembered that they had used, this is also, none of this is target English. None of this was new. This was all English that they had said themselves. None of it was repeated, except at the end, maybe, just to clarify the way that they were expressing it at that point. You said we can choose any color. No, faster. You said we can choose any color. So, but other than that, this was all genuinely produced by the kids independently by themselves. One of the expressions was this one: what do we do? So let's think about that. Why would anybody say, what do we do? This expression, what do we do, is because they don't know what to do. They felt a need to say it because they did not know what to do. So what did the teacher do to make kids feel like this? Perhaps, can you imagine in your classes, if you say, guys, everybody stand up, hey, ready, go. Your kids are like, can you imagine it? They're like, that's when you give them the English. What do we do? Big voice, guys, big voice. What do we do? Because they feel the need. Give them that English, have them say it, and then as often as possible, you put them in that same situation again. See, the need, whatever the teacher does, whatever the teacher says, create a need in the classroom for the kids to speak out. What do we need? Guys, go and get what you need. Please get what you need. Well, what do we need? Where do we sit? Guys, get a chair. So, well, can you imagine? The chairs are on the side of the room. You tell your students, go and get a chair. They come back with a chair and you don't say anything. This is creating a need for the kids to ask, where do we sit? You see? Where do we sit? You give them that English, keep putting them back in that situation as often as you possible, as often as you can, every lesson for 20 months. It comes out very naturally. What page? Guys, open your textbook, but don't say the page number. Open your textbook. So the kids are opening their textbook. Everyone's on different pages. Everyone's looking at each other. The need to ask what page is clear. You didn't give me one. Give everybody a worksheet, but not one person. One student at the back doesn't get one. You ask them, where's your paper? You didn't give me one. The need is right there. What else? Where do I put it? At the end of some activity or whatever, you give the kids the materials that you use. Thank you. Could you? Thanks. Right. Yeah. The student it has a handful of material. Doesn't know what you want to. Could you just put it up? Yeah, there, over there. Good. Yeah, where do I put it? You give them that English to use. Show me. What's the need behind show me? The need is you are holding something that the kids want to see, but you're not showing it. Yeah. Hold on to that moment. Build it up. Build. Oh, wow. You got, man, this picture here is unbelievable. I drew it. It's amazing. Of course they want to see it. There is the need behind show me, please. Don't change the rules. Interesting. Since when? When's the last time in your classes or any classes in Japan has anybody ever said, don't change the rules? Why would a student feel this need? Because the teacher's always changing the rules of the game. Change the rules. Cheat. Try and get away with it. The kids will, hey, Matthew, you're cheating. Don't change the rules. May I have? When is the last? What's the need behind may I have? You have something that the kids want. The rocket is there. That's interesting. The rocket is there. Why would anybody say the rocket is there? Well, that's because the teacher didn't know where the rocket was. Of course, the teacher knew exactly where. By the way, the rocket is the nickname that we give to our Bluetooth speaker. It's a black, I don't remember the brand name. It's a Bluetooth speaker that it looks like a rocket. So we just call it the rocket. And I knew exactly where it was because we needed to do some audio, listening to the textbook's audio. I knew where it was, but of course, I said, sorry, where's the rocket? Where's the rocket? And of course, the students, they could see it. The rocket is there. Wait, please. Why would anybody say wait, please? Because something is going too fast. So you do that on purpose. Hey, everybody's finished next. Hey, turn your page. Yeah, wait, please, wait, please, wait, please. The kids are in that situation where they feel the need to say, wait, please. What do I get? What do I get? Could you get the, yeah, thanks, hurry. Yeah, go. Yeah, but what do I get? Putting kids in that situation where they feel this feeling, give them this English, have them say it, put them in that situation again and again and again. What English do we color? Guys, your textbooks are open. Yep, page 44. Get your color pencils. Yep, good. Go. Yeah, what do we do? Color. Color the English. What English? What English do we color? Why would anybody say, you said you can choose any color? What's the need here? You said you can choose any color. When the kids say, what color? You go, oh, any color. You can choose any color. You can choose any color. So they pick up their color pencils. Some kids have got green, some kids have got blue, some kids have got yellow. You go up to the students who have a yellow pencil and you go, yellow? Yellow, why yellow? And the kids are feeling, you said you can choose any color. So you give them that English. You said you can choose any color. You put kids in situations where they feel a need to say something. That's how you increase communication in the classroom. We can't control their want. They have to, you're told to. The target English, often very boring, often very unusable. And there's no real feeling of motivation behind it. But situations that they need to say something are very powerful, very motivational. I'm currently teaching. In April of this year, I left that school after 2 years. Despite the pretty, I think, nice results that we got with every elementary school student at that school from Monday to Friday, I left because I was invited to speak at a brand new school with a wonderful acquaintance of mine. And the school is called Oshiro Kids. It's here in Setagaya in Tokyo. And again, I'm teaching elementary school kids. And this is June the 10th. This was last week. She is an elementary school first grade student, and she's brand new at English. And this was the English that she was able to use independently after 2 months. The non-target English approach, I think, has value. I often wonder why teachers don't know about it, don't put it into their classrooms. I think if more teachers knew about the non-target English approach in having our kids need to use English in the classroom, I think it would be fantastic for all of our students. Incidentally, you can contact me at englishuplift.com. And in fact, we are organizing a summer retreat in Yugawara, which is in Kanagawa, this summer, August the 6th and August the 7th. And the topic of that 2-day teacher development is all about the non-target English approach. So if you're interested in having your students speak out more in class and want to know more about it, please join us there. I hope you enjoyed my presentation this morning, and we can open it up for questions and comments, I think. Arigatou gozaimashita.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions? Yeah, Gabi Sensei, dozo.
Question in terms of your non-target English approach, how do you differentiate that between classroom English or classroom language and the non-target language approach? Do you see any differences between them?
No, I don't. I think the term classroom English is a very broad, it's a very broad term. And of course, classroom English, to my mind, is all the English that happens in the classroom. And that includes target English and non-target English. That includes the teacher's classroom English, non-target and target English as well. Classroom English is, to my mind, the biggest umbrella of all the English that is exchanged in the course of a lesson. What I'm doing is breaking down that English that the kids are practicing and using. And I see a major difference between them. And it's the English usage of within the classroom English umbrella, the English that kids use needs to be encouraged more by deliberate situations that we put them in.
Thank you.
There is a question in the chat box.
Okay.
Do you correct the students when they make mistakes?
What a good question.
I mean, we saw in your videos, we saw how that works. What I saw was, I guess it depends on what you define as a mistake. What I saw was no corrections unless there was something you wanted to emphasize and then you got them all to say it together. Am I correct?
I think you are. Now, the concept of correcting mistakes, of course, as teachers, our students will be making mistakes. Now, I make mistakes with my own Japanese. But when I'm in a communication situation, I don't really always want them to be corrected. And if they are corrected all the time, I kind of feel my motivation goes down. My wife is actually a very skilled Japanese teacher, and she hates my Japanese, but she won't correct me all the time unless it's a mistake that I consistently make. And then she'll point that out. And I think in non-target situations for our kids too, because behind our students' use of English is a motivation. And if you're constantly corrected, Japanese kids are always being corrected. They're always, this is the right way. You know, there's only one answer. And if you don't produce that one answer, well, here it is, and memorize it. I don't think not all mistakes need to be corrected. Target English, I think yes, but non-target English, in the environment of genuine communication, I think it's okay to let some mistakes go. So you'll notice that in the video too. Not all the English is perfectly correct English, but we don't necessarily need to correct it here and now. We can always come back to it or find a more suitable time. But it's a good question. I get asked that a lot. Sachi Sensei and Yuko Sensei and Yuri Sensei have been working with me for a while. And Sachi Sensei, you, I believe, have been trying the non-target English approach in your classroom. Have you seen any increase in your students' amount of English, on the quality of the English that the kids are producing?
Yes, I have, because I've been learning from Mashi Sensei for about 2 years. And at first I tried a little by little, and then my students right now are really speaking a lot than before. And like last Tuesday, we were doing the speech bubble and checking how many English they were speaking. My lessons are only 1 hour, and there were 3 kids in my class, and they said 32 or 30 English, 32 English this week. And they were really happy about it. And they were always saying that they want to speak more. And they just say the same things as Master Sensei's class, like, what do we do, or what do we get, or those kind of things. So they're really having fun speaking English because they want to use it. Yes. Excellent. Thank you.
And you put them in to that situation where they need to say that English. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. I'm putting them into that kind of situations.
Right.
I have some issues with the word control.
Okay.
I love what you're doing. I love the videos. I guess I would just prefer different words or a different way of looking at it, because to flip the situation around in allowing the kind of classroom and even promoting the kind of classroom you showed, you're also losing some of your authority, and you're allowing students to take a little bit of authority. I mean, in many situations in a typical Japanese classroom, that would be considered, the kids' behavior would be considered namaiki or bad. So it's a balance, and in communicative language teaching, I think it's always a balance of freedom versus control. If the teacher doesn't ultimately have that control, there's trouble.
Indeed.
But too much control or manipulation, and it's the worst possible outcome. So what I saw in both Pharo's and your presentation was willingness to take risks and experiment with the issue of authority. Like
Right.
Kids sit in the teacher's chair, sit in the boss's chair even.
Right.
You're willing to let kids speak out of turn, speak together, yell, stand up, come to the front of the room. All those things would be never allowed in many classrooms.
Right.
But it was all good, and the students knew not to go too far. Just my observations.
Right. Yes. And I agree with you. And also Pharo's presentation, I made a few notes during Pharo's presentation, and maybe if I could just share them with you. Pharo's presentation, there was a slide there. You can't learn English unless you have fun interacting and talking with others. And that's been my experience too. The students are craving social networks and wanting more social interaction. And that's been my experience too. Many studies suggest that language learners benefit from social interaction. That was part of his presentation. He suggested as students and teachers have strong rapport in the classroom, students' anxiety in English will be lowered. And that's been my experience too. And so the teacher needs to create successful experiences in English with English for the students. And that's kind of what I totally agree with that one. Some of his students, as part of his research had said, I wish I had not been so afraid to speak English. So this fear of using English is often put on them by their teachers, by the environment where there's only one answer, and it's the textbook answer. And you either memorize it and reproduce it, or you get your score is down. But in use of English, we don't have any of those kind of restrictions. And in fact, the kids feel a lot more success with English through non-target English experiences than they do with target English experiences. And the kids really have fun. Pharo talked about spontaneous talking curriculum. Absolutely fantastic. The importance of questions was also part of his presentation. Notice how that the kids with the non-target English approach, a lot of the English that they are producing are in fact questions. So much of our teaching involves the teacher asking students questions. What's this? What color is this? How many do you see? Well, why don't we try to put kids in situations where they have to ask questions? And I think I really agree with Pharo's point there, the importance of questions. In the chat box during Pharo's presentation, the gap between the content of tests, particularly ACAN tests, and their ability to use the content is huge. And I totally agree. Using the content, using more English in class. After all, what else is there to do for students who are learning English except use it? Why else are they studying English? Why else are we their English teachers?
I'd like to get Pharo's reaction to your presentation now that we heard your reaction to his.
Sure.
Go for it.
Yeah. And actually, I want to also at the same time speak to what you just brought up, Ruthie, in terms of the, I guess, tension between control and freedom in a classroom setting. So first, for Matthew's presentation, this non-target English, but also like this, I guess, period of your classroom where you're eliciting responses. So during the whole setup of the kite, the colored kite activity, perhaps like without making it so direct, you're eliciting responses, feedback, opinions. I like red, I don't like blue. You're eliciting English, let's say, from your students without necessarily prompting to do so. And so I think it's interesting when you say it's students have a need in that situation to speak English, and so they will. They disagree, like, oh, I don't like that red one, I prefer the blue one. I think that's really fun. I think that's a really interesting way to approach, I guess, English communication. A bit of a similar thing that I've done is, if there's like 5 minutes left in a given class, this is also, I did it at the university stage quickly because they like games too, is it'll sort of be like Pictionary. I'll just draw something on the board, and it won't be very clear what it is at the outset. So for example, if I draw an elephant, I'll start with like a tusk, but really a tusk could sort of just look 2 lines. But they'll feel, let's say, this need to speak, and they'll just shout out random nouns, hat, pizza, square, or something. I say, oh, like, nice try. So like I'll encourage it, but in a controlled setting. So back to what Ritu was saying, it's not that I'm, randomly throughout the hour, I'm just getting to, let's say, shout out English, but in a very controlled sort of situation, opening up the space for them to freely shout out, I think is a good middle ground, I guess, let's say, between a certain sense of control that the teacher has, sort of like an authority, is, let's say, the authority, but at the same time allowing that flexibility for students to feel, that they can say whatever they want, even if they know it's not pizza, they just want to say pizza. And it's something that's also attached to this is, I've been doing this in my university classes because in the Eikaiwa setting, my classes were maximum 6 students. So it's very easy to be able to have a dialogue with everybody very easily. But for my university classes, my smallest one is about 15, I think, which is not so big, but my largest is 32. Right. So in that situation, I was trying to think, well, how do I get a similar type of report? How do I do a little bit of one-on-one or one-on small groups? And so what I've been doing this semester is that they always are separated to groups. They choose their groups usually 4 students together. And I give each group a bell. So it's like a, if you imagine like a bell, like at a restaurant for the waiter, like ding, that sort of bell. So each group has a bell, and the bell from the first class, I say the rules of the bell. The bell has basically 2 purposes. One is I'll give the class a certain set of tasks that they have to finish, usually from their textbook, finish listening exercises on page 1 and then move to like vocabulary exercises on page 2. So when the group collectively finishes a set of tasks, they ring the bell, and then I go and check their work and we check it together. So it allows me to do a bit of this teacher small group teaching. But just by nature of, small spaces, 4 students together is not really a lot of space. They have their textbooks out, their pencil cases and whatnot out. Occasionally a student will accidentally ring the bell. They'll hit it with their arm or something, close a textbook. And so the second rule of the bell is if they ring the bell by accident, I'll come running over and they'll have to speak to me in English for a little bit. And so at first they're a little nervous about it, and they feel, I think, like put on the spot. But usually after like the first 2 people ring the bell in the first day of class, they'll see that, or at least I hope, they see that usually we could just have a fun conversation. Usually it's something easy, like, oh, what did you eat for breakfast? Oh, I had toast with a couple eggs and sausage. How about you? And so we could have a little bit of a back and forth. The back and forth is only really about 2 or 3 questions, but it creates a bit of an atmosphere where we can have in a one-on-one or 2-on-1 a little bit of an exchange. And what I've come to find is, starting with class number 2, now we're class 9 or 10 now, is some groups will ring the bell on purpose in order to get attention. So this comes back to the social aspect, I think, is that, you know, sometimes like students just want to talk. They feel a need, let's say, like you're saying, to ask me some question about my weekend or what I'm going to have for lunch today. And sometimes, well, actually, often I'll respond to it and we'll have a conversation. But sometimes if I'm busy because I'm checking the answers of another group, I'll say, oh, I'm busy right now, but when I have a chance, I'll come back to you. So this comes back to what Ruthie's saying about this tension between control and freedom is it's not a free for all. If they ring the bell, I'm not going to run over immediately. I have to lay some boundaries down. But at the same time, what it could tell me is, well, they want to talk to me. And so I think that signifies a bit of this need that you're talking about, Matthew, in your presentation too. So yeah, so I that was a long-winded everywhere direction.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
One thing
great
that,
presentation. Sorry, Ruthie, go ahead.
Sure. One thing that I noticed that showed a good balance between student autonomy and teacher having control was, I think the second video, maybe there was a soft-spoken student trying to speak out. And I noticed you sort of quieted all the rowdy ones and let him say his piece.
Yes.
And he was correct. And I thought, okay, yeah, they're good kids. They know when not to go too far. And if you really asked them to do something, they do it. And you could see their energy, they were feeding off each other as well as what you were doing, which is perfect. Learning socially, as Pharo talked about. I wondered their literacy. I couldn't see what age they were, but you were writing everything as they said it.
Right.
So they read as well?
Some of the students, of course, in the classroom at 2 hours a week, there's plenty of time to develop students' reading ability, and there is a reading program that those students are on. But reading and writing too is very, you know, there's the gap between the strongest and the gap between the weakest, or less experienced, shall we say, is often quite big. But in fact, reading the English on the whiteboard that I'm writing is actually not the issue here. That's why my writing's so messy. It's not that they can read it. It's the fact that they have used so much English today. That's the point I'm trying to make with them. So yeah, the reading element, I do develop their reading, and some of them are very, very good readers. But that's not the point in writing. It doesn't really matter even exactly. I mean, you could be writing. In fact, those kids have told me in a non-target English situation, Matthew, your writing is Hindi. I couldn't believe it. That's the funniest thing I've ever been told by a kid in class. Your writing is Hindi. So yes, yeah, they're good readers, but that's not the point for writing up all of that. It's not to read. It's just to bring awareness that, wow, you guys are using a lot of English in class. And the parents are really impressed too. When they pick up their kids and we show them that, you know, your child spoke, you know, this amount of English today, the parents come and take photos and stuff like that. And the monthly report that we used to do for our kids was very simply, here is the English that the kids practiced. Here is the English that the kids used. And that was the report every month. It was very simple.
So what age were they?
Elementary school kids. But of course, younger kids too, preschool kids, aged kids, they can go through the same process. But it becomes really effective at elementary school because of their social, maybe the students' social experiences with other kids in a school environment and interactions with teachers. It becomes very effective at the elementary school age, and then anything after that, junior high, high school.
What about grammar?
Well, grammar, in my experience, I've found that kids of middle to upper elementary school kids start to become interested in the structure of the language. And so I do start teaching grammar, as it were, or making them aware of grammar principles through English that they've used. So in other words, for example, I will show them that what do I do? What do I get? What do I need? Where do we sit? That in fact, it's all the same. It's the same question. You just change the action at the end. So that's kind of, I don't teach grammar, I show grammar. And especially when kids are starting to write, then I'll have them write in their notebook a number of similar looking sentences and have them realize, well, that's all the same.
So you show patterns rather than teaching grammar.
Exactly. That's a good way of describing it. Yes.
Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left. Last minute questions for either of our speakers. With so much content, so much to think about.
I'd love to hear some feedback. Yeah.
I really want to thank both of you for such interesting presentations. And it just brought it back to me as like that social aspect of language learning and creating an environment where they just want to speak out, where they actually get ownership of the language.
Yes,
it's
yes.
just so important. And then they can sort of start engaging more and using the language more. And certainly with Matthew's, all the sort of statements they made. And it's just so nice to see what they can create. And they can then see, even if they can't read it all, they can see, whoa, this many, they can see the quantity. It's very visual.
Yes.
So I thought that was really nice for them to see that too. So thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me and sharing this amazing platform with Pharo. It was fantastic.
Okay, let's wrap up here. One more big round of applause for our speakers. It was really enjoyable.
You too, Matthew. Great job.
And if you've got places to go, you can feel free to leave. And probably Gabi and I will be here for a few more minutes.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you very much for the opportunity for speaking and sharing this platform with Pharo.
Yeah, thanks for coming out this Sunday morning, and hope everyone else has a good rest of your day.